The clinking of expensive china echoed through the Chen family dining room as Elena's mother served her famous lotus root soup. But tonight, the familiar comfort food tasted like ash in Elena's mouth. She watched her father's hands tremble slightly as he reached for his wine glass, a tell she'd missed the first time around. Marcus Wei has expressed interest in potentially investing in the company, her father announced, his voice carefully neutral. But Elena caught the desperation lurking beneath the surface. The company's financial reports lay scattered in his home office upstairs. She'd seen them earlier, the red numbers bleeding across the pages. Sophie straightened in her chair, smoothing her silk blouse. Actually, I ran into him at the coffee shop near his office yesterday. He mentioned something about that. Elena's chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. That was new. In her past life, Sophie had waited longer to make her moves. The timeline was accelerating. What a fortunate coincidence. Their mother beamed, shooting Sophie an approving look. He's such a successful young man, and still single. Elena's being considered for the regional director position. Sophie interjected, her voice honey-sweet with hidden venom. Isn't that right, sister? The same division Marcus's company might invest in. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena watched her parents exchange loaded glances. In her previous life, she'd turned down the promotion to avoid complications with Marcus. That decision had been the first thread unraveling her independence. I am, Elena confirmed, setting down her chopsticks. I've worked 5 years for this opportunity. But surely, her mother began, wringing her hands. If there's a chance it might interfere with Marcus's investment. My career isn't a bargaining chip, Elena cut in, her voice sharp enough to make Sophie flinch. And neither is our family's stability. Her father's face darkened. Elena, you don't understand the situation. The bank is threatening to call in the loans. Elena finished, making everyone freeze. I saw the papers in your office. But have you looked into why our biggest client suddenly pulled out last month? Or why our credit rating dropped despite consistent payments? Sophie's face went pale. What are you suggesting? Elena met her sister's eyes. Marcus has a pattern of creating problems he can solve. Ask yourself why he suddenly appeared in our lives right when we're most vulnerable. That's enough. Their father slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. You will not jeopardize this opportunity with baseless accusations. Sophie, you'll continue meeting with Marcus. Elena, you'll either help secure this investment or step aside. The words hit Elena like physical blows, the same ultimatum that had trapped her before. But this time, she saw Sophie's fingers trembling as she texted under the table, undoubtedly reporting to Marcus. This time, she noticed her mother's forced smile cracking at the edges. I understand perfectly, Elena said quietly, rising from the table. And that's exactly why I won't step aside. Not this time. She left the dining room, her family's stunned silence following her up the stairs. In her bedroom, Elena opened her laptop to find an email from Marcus's ex-girlfriend in Chicago. Subject line, I'm ready to talk. The bridal suite of the Grand Hyatt sparkled with champagne flutes and scattered rose petals, but Elena could only focus on the bruises her sister was carefully concealing with makeup. Sophie's hands trembled as she applied another layer of concealer to her wrist. He said it was a reminder, Sophie whispered, not meeting Elena's eyes in the mirror, of what happens if I don't follow the script today. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from Rachel, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from Chicago, now safely hidden in a women's shelter. File sent. Ready when you are. Sophie. Elena knelt beside her sister, their reflection creating a painful tableau in the mirror. It's not too late. We have proof now. Rachel's testimony, the financial records, everything. You don't understand. Sophie's voice cracked. Dad signed the final merger papers yesterday. Marcus owns 40% of the company now. One word from him and what? We lose everything? Elena pulled out her laptop. Look at this. I found proof he engineered Dad's financial crisis. Created the very problem he swooped in to solve. Sophie's eyes widened as Elena showed her the evidence. Carefully documented paper trails showing how Marcus had systematically pressured their father's clients to withdraw, manipulated bank ratings, all while positioning himself as the savior. But why? Sophie's fingers traced the screen. Why go through all this? Because he couldn't handle my rejection. Elena pulled up more files. Look at his pattern. Every woman who's ever said no to him, their families mysteriously face financial ruin. He doesn't just want control over his partners. He wants to own everything they care about. A knock at the door made them both jump. 10 minutes until the ceremony, their mother called out. Sophie stood, her wedding dress catching the light like a cage of diamonds. Even if you're right, I can't hurt our family like this. Dad's heart condition is exactly why we have to stop this now. Elena grabbed her sister's hands. Marcus knows about Dad's health. He's counting on our fear to keep us quiet. But Sophie, what happens after the wedding? When he has legal control over both you and the company? Their mother knocked again, more insistent. Sophie looked at her reflection one last time, at the perfectly applied makeup hiding her wounds. What's your plan? Elena pulled out a USB drive. During your ceremony, the SEC and FBI will be receiving evidence of Marcus's financial crimes, but they need a victim's testimony to act immediately. She met her sister's eyes. It has to be during the ceremony, when he's trapped in front of witnesses, when he can't silence us. Sophie's face hardened with a resolve Elena hadn't seen in years. He'll destroy us. No, Elena squeezed her hand. He'll try. But this time, we destroy him first. As they walked toward the ceremony, Elena sent one final text to Rachel. Begin broadcast to all screens during the vows. Let's show everyone exactly who Marcus Wei really is. The Wei Industries charity gala transformed the Grand Hyatt's ballroom into a glittering chessboard of crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. Elena stood at the periphery, watching Sophie position herself near Marcus's table with the precision of a player setting up their opening move. Her sister's champagne-colored dress caught the light as she pretended to check her phone, angling herself just so. 5 years of memories crashed through Elena's mind. Marcus's hands tightening around her wrists, disguised as affectionate gestures. The tracking app she'd discovered on her phone. The way he'd isolated her from friends, one careful manipulation at a time. Oops! Sophie's practiced gasp cut through the murmur of conversation. Right on schedule, champagne splashed across her dress, creating an artful pattern that somehow made the fabric cling more attractively. Elena's fingers tightened around her clutch as Marcus rose from his table, handkerchief already in hand. But something shifted in the carefully choreographed scene. Marcus's eyes slid past Sophie, locking onto Elena instead. She felt the weight of his gaze like ice down her spine. You seem unimpressed with the show, he said, appearing at her side while Sophie dabbed at her dress with barely concealed frustration. His voice carried that same smooth confidence that had once made Elena feel special, chosen. Now it made her skin crawl. I prefer genuine interactions, Elena replied, meeting his gaze steadily. In her past life, she'd been shy, flattered by his attention. This time, she wore her knowledge like armor. How refreshing. Marcus smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Would you honor me with a dance? I promise to keep it genuine. Elena accepted his hand, ignoring Sophie's sharp intake of breath from across the room. As they moved across the dance floor, she felt the familiar chemistry spark between them, the dangerous pull that had blinded her to so many red flags. Your sister mentioned you work in corporate psychology, Marcus said, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. I find human behavior fascinating. The ways people reveal themselves when they think no one's watching. Yes, Elena replied, thinking of the dossier growing on her laptop. People show their true nature in unexpected ways. The music shifted, and so did Marcus's grip, slightly too tight, a test of boundaries. Elena remembered this dance from before, but now she saw it clearly. Every turn was a power play, every compliment laying groundwork for future control. You're different from anyone I've met, Marcus murmured, echoing words he'd once used to make her feel unique, special, isolated. From the corner of her eye, Elena caught Sophie disappearing into the bathroom, her shoulders shaking. The sight threatened to crack her resolve. In her past life, she'd followed her sister, comforting her, stepping back to give Sophie a chance with Marcus. That decision had cost them both dearly. This time, Elena stayed on the dance floor, matching Marcus step for step. She'd learn his patterns, document his moves, and when the time came, she'd be ready to protect Sophie, even if her sister hated her for it. Different can be dangerous, Elena replied softly, letting him see a flash of the steel beneath her smile. Let him think he'd found a worthy opponent. This time, she was playing the long game. The Singapore offer lay on Elena's desk like a beautifully wrapped poison. Director of International Operations at Y Industries, a position created just for her, Marcus had said with that practiced smile. The contract promised a salary that could clear her father's debts twice over, and the engagement ring nestled in its black velvet box caught the afternoon light, throwing diamonds across her office walls. It's a limited-time offer, Marcus said, leaning against her desk with calculated casualness. The Singapore office needs an answer by Friday. His confidence was absolute, the same confidence that had once convinced her that his controlling behavior was love. Through her office window, Elena caught a glimpse of Sophie in the building's courtyard below, pretending to take a phone call. Her sister's face was turned up toward the window, waiting for the predetermined signal, Elena's rejection, that would let her swoop in as the consolation prize. The timing is perfect, Marcus continued, his voice dropping to that intimate tone she remembered too well. Your father's company needs stability. You need career growth. And he reached for her hand. I need someone who understands the demands of my position. Elena let him take her hand, fighting the urge to recoil. In her past life, she'd said no immediately, horrified by the idea of leaving her family. That rejection had set off the chain of events leading to Sophie's involvement. This time, she smiled. It's such a big decision, she said softly. Would you mind if I took a few days to think it over? To make arrangements? Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, surprise, quickly masked by pleasure. He thought she was yielding. Of course, take the weekend. We can celebrate your decision on Monday. The moment he left, Elena pulled out her burner phone, the one she'd bought specifically for this purpose. The text from Marcus's ex-girlfriend in Chicago glowed on the screen. Landing in an hour. Delete this after reading. Elena grabbed her coat and car keys. She had 48 hours before she had to give Marcus an answer. 48 hours to confirm what she'd suspected since receiving the Chicago woman's first email, that Marcus Way's pattern of control went far beyond manipulation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Well, did you turn him down? Elena typed back, still thinking about it. She could almost feel her sister's fury and confusion radiating from the courtyard below. As she rushed to her car, Elena's hand brushed against the USB drive in her pocket. It contained everything she'd gathered so far. Financial records showing Marcus's systematic targeting of their father's company. Testimonies from former employees about his pattern of pursuing and destroying women in his orbit. And most damning of all, the recorded conversations with his previous victims. The engagement ring felt heavy in her purse, but this time, it wasn't a symbol of defeat, it was proof. Every moment, Marcus thought she was considering his offer was another moment to gather evidence. Every day she kept him focused on her was another day Sophie stayed safe. Elena started her car, checking her rearview mirror for the tail she knew Marcus would have assigned. Time to meet the woman who'd escaped Marcus Wee's golden cage and learn exactly how high the stakes really were. Elena's thumb hovered over Sophie's latest Instagram post, a perfectly staged photo of her sister and Marcus at the Y Industries charity ball. Sophie's smile was flawless, her designer gown immaculate, but Elena noticed how her sister's fingers dug into her clutch, knuckles white with tension. Marcus's hand rested on her waist, possessive and controlling, exactly where Elena remembered it always being. They make such a beautiful couple, their mother sighed, refilling her wine glass at the weekly family dinner. I was wrong to push you toward him, Elena. Clearly, fate had other plans. Elena said nothing, remembering Sophie's frantic call last night. He's having my phone monitored for work purposes, she'd whispered. Standard protocol for executives, he says. But Elena, he knows about my lunch with Kate yesterday. He knew what we ordered. Now, across the dinner table, Sophie picked at her food, her usual appetite gone. Their father, buoyed by Marcus's recent investment in his company, remained oblivious to his younger daughter's fading spirit. The engagement party next week, Sophie started. We'll be at the Grand Hyatt. Marcus interrupted smoothly, appearing in the doorway. He'd gotten into the habit of showing up unannounced at family gatherings. I hope you don't mind, darling. I took the liberty of arranging everything. Elena watched her sister's face carefully maintain its smile. Of course not. You think of everything. During dessert, Elena excused herself to use the bathroom. Instead, she slipped into Sophie's room, using the emergency phone cloning software she'd purchased. It took 30 seconds to confirm her suspicions. 3 tracking apps disguised as system processors, keyloggers, and location monitoring that reported directly to Marcus's private server. A floorboard creaked behind her. Elena whirled to find Sophie in the doorway. "What are you doing?" her sister asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Proving what you already know." Elena showed her the screen. "He's not protecting you, Sophie. He's caging you. You don't understand." Sophie's hands twisted together, a nervous habit from childhood. Kate didn't just move abroad. Marcus offered her husband a job in their Singapore office, an offer they couldn't refuse. Her eyes met Elena's. She was the only one who knew about the bruises. Elena's heart stopped. "He's hurting you already?" "Not him. Never directly. I fell down the stairs at his beach house last month. His security team was very concerned, very helpful. Made sure I understood how dangerous those stairs could be." The sisters stared at each other, the weight of unspoken terror hanging between them. From downstairs, they heard Marcus's laugh, charming, controlled, and utterly false. "I can't just leave," Sophie breathed. "He has everything now. Dad's company, Mom's dreams, my career. One wrong move, and it all crashes down." She straightened her shoulders, the perfect porcelain doll again. "Some cages are made of gold, sister dear. At least mine comes with a view." Elena grabbed her sister's arm as she turned to leave. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. It's not too late." Sophie's smile was heartbreaking in its resignation. It was too late the moment he said no to him. "We both know I was never the one he really wanted." Elena's apartment door burst open as Sophie stormed in, clutching a manila folder. Rain dripped from her designer coat onto the hardwood floors. But for once, her sister wasn't concerned about maintaining her perfect appearance. "Care to explain these?" Sophie's hands shook as she threw the folder onto Elena's coffee table. Photos spilled out. Surveillance shots of Marcus with different women, police reports, and hospital records. Elena recognized her own research, meticulously gathered over the past weeks. "You went through my home office," Elena said quietly, remembering to act surprised. She'd left the folder deliberately, knowing Sophie's weekly borrowing of her clothes would lead to this confrontation. "Because you've been acting crazy." Sophie's mascara smeared as she wiped angry tears. Following Marcus, digging up his past, she stopped abruptly, pulling out her phone. "Look at this. Is this your idea of sisterly concern?" The text message glowed on the screen. "Stay away from Marcus Y. You don't know what he's capable of. Final warning." Elena's blood ran cold. This was new. She hadn't known about threats in her past life. "Sophie, I didn't send that." "Then who did?" "Because the timing is awfully convenient with your little investigation." Elena moved to her laptop, opening a hidden folder. 3 weeks ago, I received this." She played an audio file. Marcus's voice, smooth as silk, discussing with his security head how to handle Sophie if Elena refused his proposal. "He's playing us against each other. It's what he does." Sophie sank onto the couch, her face ashen. "There's more, isn't there? His ex-girlfriend in Chicago?" Elena pulled out another file. "She's living under a new identity. I met her last weekend. She showed me the scars, Sophie. The accidents that happened when she tried to leave him. But he's offering me a position in the company," Sophie whispered. "Head of public relations. He says I have a natural talent for managing perceptions." "Managing perceptions," Elena repeated bitterly. Like how his last 3 girlfriends all had mental breakdowns that were actually suicide attempts, or how their families suddenly received massive financial opportunities right before each woman disappeared from public view. Sophie's phone buzzed again, Marcus's name lighting up the screen. Elena watched her sister stare at it, seeing the first cracks in her ambitious facade. "I can handle him," Sophie said, but her voice wavered. "I'm smarter than those other women. I know what I'm doing." "That's exactly what I thought." Elena knelt before her sister, taking her trembling hands. "But Sophie, think about it. Why would a man like Marcus suddenly offer you everything you want, right after I refuse him? He's not pursuing you. He's using you to punish me." The silence stretched between them, filled with years of rivalry and hurt, but also something older, the memory of two sisters who once protected each other. Sophie's phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. "If," Sophie's voice cracked, "if what you're saying is true, then what do we do?" Elena squeezed her sister's hands. "We stop competing. We start working together. Because, Sophie, this isn't about winning anymore. It's about surviving." A year later, Elena stood in her new office, watching the sunset paint Shanghai's skyline in shades of gold. The wall behind her desk displayed her credentials, not from Y Industries, but from her own consulting firm specializing in corporate psychology and survivor advocacy. A framed newspaper article hung beside them. Y Industries CEO faces federal charges. A pattern of manipulation exposed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Just finished my first speaking engagement. Standing ovation. Missing my sister manager already." Elena smiled, remembering how Sophie had found her voice in the aftermath of the wedding disaster. After the video evidence played on every screen in the ballroom, Marcus's threats, testimonies from previous victims, the financial crimes, Sophie had grabbed the microphone. In front of 500 stunned guests, she told her own story, her voice growing stronger with each word. The door opened, and Dr. Kate Chen, formerly Sophie's best friend, now their foundation's lead counselor, entered with a stack of files. "3 more companies want to implement our anti-harassment training program," Kate announced, and Sophie's TED talk about recognizing corporate abuse has gone viral. Elena's laptop chimed with a video call. Sophie's face appeared, flushed with triumph despite the obvious exhaustion. "Guess who's launching a support network for survivors of financial abuse?" Sophie's eyes sparkled with purpose. "The Singapore branch opens next month. Remember when Marcus threatened to send me there? Life has a sense of irony." "Speaking of irony," Kate interjected, pulling up a news alert. "Marcus's sentencing is tomorrow." The sisters fell quiet, both remembering. Their father had survived the shock of Marcus's exposure, and with the stolen assets recovered, their family business was slowly rebuilding, stronger, more ethical, with both daughters on the board of directors. "Mom called," Sophie said softly. "She's finally starting that domestic violence support group at her church. Says she keeps thinking about all the signs she missed." Elena touched the screen where her sister's image smiled. "We all miss signs, but we learned." "Because you remembered," Sophie corrected. "Sometimes I still can't believe your story, living through it all before, coming back, choosing to face him again to save me." Elena had never told Sophie if her past life memories were real or just prophetic dreams. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the stack of letters on her desk from women that helped escape similar situations, the growing network of survivors becoming advocates. "By the way," Sophie's grin turned mischievous, "that cute lawyer from the SEC task force asked about you again. The one who helped build the case." "Sophie." "What? Just because one man was a monster doesn't mean they all are. And this one looks at you like you hung the moon." Elena laughed, a free, unburdened sound that still sometimes surprised her. "Maybe. But this time, I'm choosing myself first. Everything else can wait." Speaking of choices, Sophie's expression softened. "Thank you for choosing to save me, even when I was too blind to save myself." Elena looked at the photo on her desk, the two sisters at the opening of their foundation, arms around each other, stronger for having faced the storm together. "Some choices," she said, "remake the world." Elena's hands trembled as she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, droplets of cold water still clinging to her face. The date on her phone read April 15, 2019, the day that had changed everything. Her 28-year-old face looked back at her, unmarked by the years of stress and sleepless nights that Marcus would eventually carve into her features. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Lena? Are you okay?" I heard screaming. Sophie's voice carried that familiar note of concern that Elena had almost forgotten existed between them, before the competition, before Marcus. "I'm fine," Elena managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just a bad dream." She opened the door to find her sister standing there in her favorite silk pajamas, dark hair tousled from sleep. Sophie's face showed none of the cold calculation it would develop over the next few months. For now, she was still just Elena's baby sister, the one who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Sophie said, reaching out to touch Elena's arm. The gentle contact nearly broke her. In her past life, the last time Sophie had touched her was to serve her divorce papers, papers that had Marcus's fingerprints all over them. Elena's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Y Industries Charity Gala, 7 p.m. Her stomach lurched. The gala where Marcus had first set his sights on their family, recognizing their father's struggling business as the perfect leverage for his gains. "Oh my God, you're coming tonight, right?" Sophie's eyes lit up with innocent excitement. "I heard Marcus Way himself is attending. Can you believe it? Forbes, 30 under 30, self-made billionaire, and apparently still single." She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively, unaware of how those words twisted like knives in Elena's gut. In her past life, Elena had worn a red dress to the gala, catching Marcus's eye immediately. That dress still hung in her closet, tags attached. With shaking fingers, she reached for her phone and pulled up a shopping app. "Actually, I think I'm going to wear black tonight." "Black? But you never wear black to events," Sophie pouted. "You always say it's too severe for your complexion." Elena met her sister's eyes in the mirror. Maybe it's time for a change. Time to be someone stronger. The confusion on Sophie's face almost made Elena confess everything right there. But she couldn't. Not yet. First, she needed evidence of Marcus's past, of the trail of broken women he'd left behind. She needed to become the barrier between her sister and the monster who would tear their family apart. "Lena." Sophie's voice was small now. "You're starting to scare me. What's really going on?" Elena forced a smile, one she'd practiced countless times during her marriage to Marcus. "Nothing's wrong, Soph. I think it's time I started making different choices. Better ones." She watched her sister leave, questions still lingering in her eyes. Once alone, Elena pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "Marcus Way, the truth." Below it, she began listing dates, names, and incidents she remembered from her past life. This time she would be ready. This time, she would protect not just herself, but everyone she loved from the charming predator who had destroyed them all.